So here's what happens when you go back into the shop after stealing from it. You're renamed Thief in capital letters. And there's no way to save and quit while the cutscene is playing because that cutscene prevents you from doing anything. Because it disables your button inputs. It's cool that you can actually save and quit literally whenever you want in this game, which includes while you're dying. So you can actually avoid getting a death on the death counter by just pressing A, B, select, and start while the dying animation is playing. Like, that is so cool. I guess it's a good thing that they have a punishment for stealing from the shop. Both for the obvious reason and because, well, it's kind of broken being able to steal from stores, so I understand why they never would let you do it again. Gameplay mechanically wise. These things are immune to attacks from the front, so you gotta attack them with a spin attack while facing away from them because they mimic your movements and obviously you want them to face away from you. So, this is Bottle Grotto, and I'm not really sure why it's called that because you don't get a bottle in it at all. In fact, there are no bottles in this game. Even though this is a top-down Zelda game that takes place after Zelda 1, when the early installment weirdness was at its worst, there's no empty bottles in this game at all, which is really stupid. The Guardian Acorn basically doubles your defense, but whenever you get it, it plays a repetitive droning music that doesn't stop until it ends. And it also has this animation that you get when you obtain it. And it takes several seconds for that animation to run out, and you have to scroll through a bunch of slowly moving text after getting it. And that happens with the piece of power too. Like, I love how your damage output is doubled when you have this thing, and I love the fact that you blast enemies away in this cool red effect. But it's not always worth it to me. I mean, it's great for cheesing boss fights, assuming that you happen to make the enemies drop it at that time. But unfortunately, the music and the fact that you have to wait so long between getting it and actually being able to do anything, it often discourages me from getting those power-ups at all. I mean, usually I don't even need them, so. Like, the Guardian Acorn is only really necessary if you're low on health and don't have a... And part of the reason the side-scrolling... Like, see, that side-scroller perfectly showed how short your jump is when you're in a side-scrolling area, which is ironic because you'd expect, since the side-scrolling areas are dedicated to platforming, you'd expect that your jump would be even higher, not gimped to hell. Like, really? Like, they're easily the worst part of the game. They're not fun at all, and it's all because of how awkward the jump physics are. Yeah, watch me cheese that mini-boss. I love the piece of power, even though it's really tedious to actually obtain. I still wish that, like, oh yeah, I hate that puzzle. That's not even really a puzzle. It's, if you try to figure it out on your own, it's pure trial and error, and you might not be motivated enough to do it. The only way you can know how you're supposed to deal with that puzzle is to specifically talk to that owl statue or stone tablet. Like, that's one of my least favorite things. Like, that would easily be a horribly designed puzzle if it weren't for the fact that someone actually tells you what to do in it. But anyways, the whole Guardian Acorn and piece of power thing is also the whole stopwatch thing from Zelda 1. Like, I wish they brought the stopwatch back, and I wish I brought the Guardian Acorn piece of power back. Because it's boring having the only things that enemies drop when you kill them be either rupees that you don't need because chances are your wallet's full, or hearts that you probably don't need, or items that you probably don't need. Like, I would like there to be a chance that the things that enemy drops actually is useful to me. That's why I loved the stopwatch in Zelda 1. That's why I love the Guardian Acorn piece of power in this game. They just need to be refined, because Zelda 1 didn't force you to stop for several seconds while text slowly. Zelda 1 did the stopwatch perfectly, because you picked it up and it instantly had its effect. No fanfare, no victory music, no you standing still for a few seconds while slow text slowly scrolls by. None of that crap. So all they have to do is they should reintroduce the piece of power in another top-down Zelda game, but don't have the stupid text show up. Like, then it'd be perfect. And don't have the victory animation play, because that's gonna get really repetitive the 9th time it happens. And I could do without the music too, because do we really need to hear constant droning music overshadowing the dungeon music to know that... I mean, I'm pretty sure you're not gonna forget that you have that power up. I mean, the Guardian Acorn maybe, because it's easy to forget that you have it, I guess, but you're not gonna forget that you're sending enemies blasting away with your sword. And your sword icon keeps glowing, so you're not gonna forget that you have it. And look, Goombas and Piranha Plants. Like I said, this game has a ton of Mario references. Which only makes me wish that I was playing as Mario in these sections. Although in a way, Link is superior to Mario in this case because he has a sword, and so he's a lot better at attacking the enemies and dealing with them. Mario would have a lot harder of a time against the Piranha Plants. So that was Bottle Grotto. It's an alright dungeon. Like, I love how it introduces the concept of you standing on blocks, and then you hit the crystal switch and the blocks raise, but you're still on them. In Link to the Past, when you did that, you would be flickering, like your sprite would be flickering, and you wouldn't be standing on top of them. Even though that game's whole gimmick was that they introduced 2 levels to the game instead of just 1. I hate this boss. A good way to cheese it is to pick up the jar and throw it against the southeast corner of one of the torches. Preferably the leftmost one, because that can actually break the jar in one go. The problem is that this boss takes too long. Like, it reminds me of Sonic Rush, where at this part you're doing nothing but dodging attacks and you're not actually attacking the boss yourself. And eventually, when you actually break the bottle, then the boss will circle around you, and it'll create fake copies of itself while it's circling around you. There's no way of telling where it's gonna spawn next. So, and it can spawn on top of you. It can appear on top of you and then hit you from touch damage. It's like in Castlevania where Dracula just appears on top of you. I hate that. I hate that boss so much for that. So that's why I decided to go out of the dungeon, do a little exploring on my own, and eventually managed to get one of the, if not the best item in the game. Well, it's not really an item because it's respawnable. That's a warp hole. They're not actually ever directly referenced in the game. There is text, there's unused text in the game calling warp holes, but they're never actually talked about in the game. I hate these enemies. It's so easy for them to hit you. They pop out suddenly and they have a really long reach. But the warp system in this game is pathetic. Like, even Zelda 1 had a better warp system, because here you can only warp to 4 different locations in the map. And thankfully those 4 different locations are pretty far spread out. But It doesn't change the fact that to warp, you don't have a warp item. I mean, you do, but it only sends you to one place. A grand total of one place that is just slightly to the north of a warp hole. Like, really? I would have preferred it if the flute was like the flute in Zelda 1, but better. In that, it's like, because in Zelda 1, you would warp to any dungeon you wanted, but you can only warp to one location at a time, and you had to be standing in a very specific direction to make the tornado bring you to the next dungeon or the previous one. And so, if you wanted to travel to one part of the overworld quickly, you had to constantly play the flute over and over again. All this game would have had to do was do what Link to the Past did. But no. This is Crazy Tracy's secret medicine. It's basically the fairy of this game. I would have preferred it if we just did what Link to the Past did. She charges different prices depending on... Well, actually, I don't know what it depends on. Sometimes she charges only like 25 rupees for it. So it sucks when she has the higher price, and then you go out grinding for rupees, and then you show up, and suddenly she's selling it at 23 rupees. That boss fight was really annoying. Like, I don't remember it being that hard when I first played it. Like, you can charge up the spin attack to deal more damage, but it's completely sudden and instant when it all of a sudden appears. And so it's hard to anticipate when it's going to appear and become a threat. Tama Ranch Mountain. I thought it was called Tao Tao Heights. Oh great, it's the owl again. And the music that plays here is pretty droning. It's perfect for the owl. It's a perfect theme for the owl because it perfectly represents how boring he is. One thing I love about this game, among many others, I love the fact that every single dungeon has its own distinct theme. This is the first Zelda game to do that. Granted, this results in them running out of ideas and putting the cave music as one of the dungeon themes. I mean, it's not exactly the same music, but it's pretty close, and the cave music by itself is really repetitive and boring. Like, it's just a few notes repeated over and over again. To the point where sometimes I kind of feel bad about editing and doing cuts because it's like the music cuts out and is suddenly... Like, the music switches to a more forward part of the soundtrack. And so it's really noticeable when I do cuts. But when I'm in a cave and I do editing, it's a lot harder to notice watching it because the music is so short and repetitive. Oh, Madame Meow Meow. That's what her name is. It's also so hard to... It's hard to actually properly say her name, too. And of course they have to remind you, like they always say very nice when you get 50 rupees. And they say joy when you get 20 rupees. It pads it out. I wouldn't be complaining so much if they didn't have the text scroll so slowly. That is a major problem with this game. It really helps to make it one of the most slow-paced Zelda games ever. That and the fact that when you're moving towards something that you can pick up or blow up, that's not a crack in the wall, I mean, then the game constantly insists on reminding you what you should do. And we met the passive-aggressive bat again earlier. I hate how you return to that dungeon that you already went to, with the item you got last time, because like, it's backtracking. That's all it is. And I don't like backtracking to a dungeon I already been through using the item that I got later. I think you could have bought bombs before the first dungeon. Not really sure though. So maybe that was my fault. I don't know.